Hi, this is my VR to hashtag tarot to the extreme or tarot extremes, which is a VR to Marlene here on YouTube. I'll link her original video down below. I just saw this video earlier today, and even though I usually don't post on Mondays, which I'm pretty sure this is gonna go up on Monday, I really wanted to get my video out there for you guys. So we have two extremes for 7 prompts. So let's get started. First is the minimalist versus the maximalist. So for the minimalist, I have my tarot or the tarot. And the reason that I see this as a minimalist deck is because it is super simple. We have the rat as a character and then simply a colored background. So there isn't really much more to the cards, even though the cards definitely aren't pips, and I could have picked out a pip deck for minimalist, but I thought that was a little bit too simple. I think this really shows us like a minimalist look of the tarot, but with the character of a rat. And the titles are also very minimal. I like that. There's not much to see in these cards, and that makes it fairly easy to read with. So I'm just going to show you a couple of more cards, but this is the tarot for my minimalist. For the maximalist deck, I took a little bit of a different approach. This is my Wildwood Tarot, and the reason that I see this as maximalist is not only because there is a lot of detail in the artwork, but also because it requires you to do the most when it comes to learning about this deck. Like, I guess you could pick this deck up and read with it right off the bat, but there's a guidebook that comes with this that can help you soak really deep into the story and the idea, the concept behind this deck. I still have to do that, which is why I haven't really read with this deck yet, but there's a lot of detail. There's very detailed artwork here in these cards, and I really appreciate that. Another thing that is more maximalist here is that they have changed the names of the suits. So that is something that you have to get used to. They have renamed many of the major arcana as well. So there's just a lot to learn. So I didn't take this maximalist approach as in where there is necessarily very busy artwork, which I could have done if I picked out like my Muse Tarot, but I wanted to go with something that takes away like a maximalist like effort, I guess, when it comes to working with a deck. So the Tarot is definitely more minimalist in that it is easier to pick up and do a reading with because it's very straightforward, and the Wildwood definitely takes a lot more effort to get to know it and to get to working with it. Next up is my daytime versus my nighttime deck. And I'm gonna explain to you why I chose these, because I think my interpretations are a little bit different. So for my daytime deck, I chose the Dreaming Way Tarot. Not only because I feel like the aesthetics, the images, feel like it is very daytime appropriate with very light colors, but these cards can kick my ass. They are very straightforward, the messages, they are very cutthroat, and it doesn't mind telling me the truth. Now, so this is not a deck that I would like to pull out for like a light reading before I go to bed, and then it like tears me to shreds and then I have to go to bed with that reading fresh in my mind. So this is definitely one that I would like to do like in the daytime readings with, so that I still have the entire day to sort of ponder over it and to sort of get it into perspective. So that is why I chose this for my daytime deck, also because most of the tarot readings that I do are in the daytime, and this is one of my favorite decks. So with that logic in mind, for my nighttime deck, I chose my Everyday Witch Tarot, because this is, and I'm pretty sure I talked about this in my Good Mood decks as well, but this is a deck that gives very gentle, kind messages. Like, yeah, it will tell me what I need to hear, as do kind of all of my decks, but I know that if I do a reading with this before I go to bed, that it won't give me anything super harsh to sort of mull over when I'm trying to go to bed. It's way more gentle like that. So that is why I chose this as my nighttime deck, because it doesn't like it won't cause me to lack sleep if I do a reading before I go to bed with it, unlike the Dreaming Way Tarot. So those are my daytime and my nighttime deck. Now we are on to the best shuffle and the worst shuffle. So the best shuffle, it could be any Llewellyn deck. I just chose the Mermaid Tarot here because this one does really good overhand shuffles, but not like too good that I won't get any pop-out cards, which is how I read. But it also riffle shuffles really well. And it's with these Llewellyn decks that I actually learned to riffle shuffle. And I have mobility issues in my hands, okay? So not every deck is easy to shuffle, but Llewellyn decks are constantly like easy to shuffle. So that is how I would do a reading with it, like that. So that makes it super easy, really fun to shuffle. And that is part of the reason why I always recommend Llewellyn decks for beginners, because I feel like shuffling is part of the experience when reading tarot. And for beginners, I want to make it a pleasant experience. The Therapets. I love this deck, okay? I have talked about it a lot. But this one is so huge. Look at this. It doesn't even really properly fit in the frame. They're huge, these cards. So that makes it really hard to shuffle. Like, I cannot wrap my hands around this. It's really hard to sort of shuffle. Like, I can do it, but my hand is stretched all the way. So if I want to shuffle this, I do it sideways. But it's still really chunky. So that's not really a great shuffle at all. Or I have to do like over the long side, but that really doesn't work at all either. So because it goes like, it does that. So that is why this is such a hard deck to shuffle. But luckily it's like an affirmation deck, so I can just like do this and then take the top card, which is usually how I read with this. So those are my best shuffle and my worst shuffle. We're now on to Confronting and Comforting. This is my Confronting deck, like the Dreaming Way Tarot is as well. But there's something about my Wild Unknown that feels so confronting. I think it's also because it does something really different to the tarot. So it's not only confronting in the messages that it gives me, but also in the way that I have to read with it, because it is really different and I have to get used to it, and it's not always easy. Oh, that's the boat. I don't know if you are hearing that, but it's not always easy for me to interpret messages with this deck, and that is another reason that it is so confronting for me to work with this deck. So it's not only, like I said, the messages, but also just the way that I read with it and how I am not comfortable or completely comfortable reading with this deck yet. And then my comforting deck is the Good Karma. I talked about this deck in my Good Mood decks because this is really comforting. I love the messages that I get with this. It is so easy to read with as well. So that is definitely super comforting. And this is my comfort deck. I love pulling this for clients when I feel like their energy sort of requires like a more gentle touch, a more gentle sort of reading. I love reading with the Good Karma Tarot. It is definitely has become one of my favorites in the last couple of months, because a couple of months ago I actually considered decluttering this, but I'm so happy that I didn't, because ever since I have been feeling really called to work with it, and it is just a really comforting deck. Let's just compare the backs on these. My Confronting and my Comforting deck. Now for an everyday versus every so often. The Lightyear's Tarot is a deck that I find so easy to read with. It took me a while to actually get over myself and actually get this deck. But when I did, I was so happy because this is so easy to read with. This is modern, it's fun, it's relatable. It is just so easy for me to get messages with this deck, which is why it is one that I could literally use every day, because I feel like I haven't burned out of it when I use this. And even though I get similar cards over, multiple readings, I still get super different vibes and intuitive hits with this. And this is a deck that I talked about when I compared it to the Modern Witch Tarot, and I'll link it in the eye above. But this deck really helps you more connect to your intuition, which is why it's one that I would love to use every day. And right here I have my Little Wizard's Tarot, which is one that I absolutely love. This is one of my Good Mood decks as well. But if I'm real with myself, I am not pulled to a Harry Potter deck every day. This is a deck that I have to be in the mood for, and it's not a deck that I can use just every single day, even though, like, how awesome would it be to like pull Harry Potter tarot cards every single day. But I'm just not in the mood for that. And every time I flip through this deck, I am so happy. I get so happy. I love this. This is also definitely like a comforting deck. There are a lot of different decks that I had in mind for many of these different prompts, but I was a good girl and I only chose one deck for each prompt. So let's keep the Dursleys on top there. So those are my everyday and every so often. I have my overrated and underrated. Let's start with the overrated. And this is the Tarot of the Divine. And the reason that I'm saying this is overrated is not because I think it's a bad deck. If I thought it was a bad deck, I would not have it in my collection. But I do think it's overrated because I feel like in order to truly read really well with this deck and to get the most out of it, you have to get the extra book with it. And I talked about this deck in my one deck for each sign. I would love to hear from you if you haven't seen it, what you guess what sign I assigned the Tarot of the Divine. But I feel like you have to read the book and to be really familiar with the stories behind this deck, which is why I also thought of this deck for the Maximalist prompt. But I decided to have it here in Overrated instead, just because this is a deck that we used to hear so much about, or at least the part of TarotTube that I was in, I heard about this deck all the time. I was in a witchy Discord server. They would recommend this deck all the time. And then I got it and I was like, yeah, it's really pretty. The cardstock is gorgeous. It's like linen cardstock, which I have never seen before. And I don't have any other decks who have this kind of cardstock. Let's see how it actually shuffles though. Like how overrated is the shuffle on this. It's pretty good. And I have mobility issues in my hand. Like it shuffles really good, and the cards next together, they are really beautiful. Look at that. It's so colorful and fun. But in order to really truly like get the most out of this, I think you need to know the stories behind it, which is why I think it's overrated. You're not only getting a deck, you have to sort of get the book with it as well. And then my underrated deck is the Wake Me Up Tarot. And I'm saying underrated, but this is basically like an unknown deck. You can get this on Tavada Tarot, but I got it directly from the creator on Instagram, which I will link down below. And this, I feel like this is underrated. Like I said, it is unknown, but this is what I want This Might Hurt Tarot to be. I talked about this in my July show and tell, I think, so I won't go too into depth because that is going up this Wednesday. But this is the world that I feel like I live in. And I love it so much. Like, the tower is a wedding cake. There's so much in this deck that I feel like is so relatable to me. And I understand that this is not relatable to everybody because everybody sort of lives in their own little different world. And I guess the This Might Hurt Tarot really relates to many people, but it never really related to me. And I didn't understand why until like I got this deck and I get that this is the world that I live in. It's so good. It is so good. I'm definitely gonna do a video on this where I go through the entire deck and do an entire walkthrough with my interpretations of it. But yeah, these are my overrated and underrated decks. For the last one, I have to do a double, okay? I'm so sorry. I literally don't have any other deck that I specifically use for shadow work. But we have light work versus shadow work. Sorry, I should have started with that. So for light work, I have the Muse Tarot. And yes, I was gonna declutter this and I still might, but I talked about this in my July show and tell that is coming up on Wednesday. And I looked through the cards and I just was not sure. And then I used it for my podcast episode, which you can listen to for free. Link is in the description box below. Or if you want to see the video version, you can sign up for my channel memberships. And I used it, and even though it was very different than what I'm used to with tarot decks nowadays and with readings nowadays, because I tend to be very practical with my readings, hence the Wake Me Up Tarot. And this is way more spiritual. So it definitely took some getting used to, but I think I'm gonna keep this in my collection for a little bit. And I felt like with the reading it gave me, it was way more light work-ish. When I think of like shadow work, going deep within and uncovering like deep truths sort of about myself, things that are hidden with the Muse Tarot, and when I think of light work, I think of what is on the surface and how I can work with that to sort of better my life or to sort of like level up my life in a way. Like that is probably not what light work is, but that is what I think of it and how I interpret it is. And this is my channel, so if you want to interpret it different, make your own channel and post your own video about it. I will probably watch it. Then for shadow work, I have the Wild Unknown again. This is my pocket edition, by the way. I only have the pocket edition. And like I said, let's just keep flipping on. Like I said with the confronting prompts, this is so confronting, and if I were to do a shadow reading or shadow work reading, I guess, this is absolutely the deck that I'll reach for. I haven't really been called to do much shadow work lately. I definitely feel like that is gonna be much more my vibe in autumn and winter, but lately I just haven't really been feeling like it. But I will absolutely grab this deck for that and dive deep with the little guidebook that comes with it too. And that is why this is such like a shadow work type of deck. Like let's end on that card with this card. I guess like this is pretty dark too, but let's keep this one on top. So those are my light work and shadow work. This was my VR to the hashtag Tarot to the Extreme to Marlene. Again, I'll link her original video down below. I'll have the prompts down below as well, so you can do your own video. Definitely let me know in the comments down below if you've already done it, because I would love to come over to your channel and watch it. You can join the channel membership if you're interested in getting the video version of my weekly podcast, where I do a week ahead forecast through tarot and astrology. You also get access to the private Discord server, which has been a lot of fun. Subscribe to the channel for more tarot chats, pick a card readings, all that fun stuff. You can book a private one-on-one tarot reading with me through the link in the description box below. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.